You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Today's episode discusses themes of death, dying, and the loss of children, both through legend and real-world accounts. While I always approach these topics with care and respect, some listeners may find this content emotionally difficult or disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Ghost children, much like non-ghost children, are found everywhere you turn. This part of the ghostly phenomenon is present worldwide and across every culture with their own small tweaks and theories, but there, nevertheless. It was a tough time getting through this one. Considering the concepts not only of child death, but that they may become earthbound, is uncomfortable. It also opens the floodgates to other levels of questioning. If children do in fact become earthbound spirits, what does that say about being earthbound? Is it some form of punishment, or simply luck of the draw? Are all ghosts in their ghostly state because they don't know they're dead? They got confused about their situation? Or they don't want to cross over? Or they can't cross over, even if they've tried? What would that mean for ghostly kids if these are the reasons why someone becomes a ghost following death? These members of our societies who are so innocent, so undeserving of what seems on the surface of it, kind of like a punishment, a grim fate. At the very least, it doesn't seem fair when the option to cross into the light is right there. What about toddlers, old enough to be wise to their predicament, but forever too mentally undeveloped to think their way out of it? What about infants, who never learned to communicate what they needed? What happens to them? You've heard this before, I'm sure, that children automatically cross over. Their innocence in itself is like a fast-track ticket to heaven, right? What age is the cutoff? And what decides the innocence factor? Who decides innocence parameters? There's a lot to consider and a lot to debate when it comes to ghost children. And that's not even touching on theories behind these particular apparitions. Two main thoughts exist behind the ghost children, at least here in the West. First, kids can and do become ghosts, and they can and do haunt places and people. For the same reasons as any other ghosts, they don't know they're dead, they're confused, they don't want to leave a person they're fond of, they've never considered going into this light you speak of. And the other main theory, kids do not become ghosts because that would make the universe unjust, God unkind, and reality so unfair. Therefore, ghostly children must be something else. Usually an entity trying to lure you in with fake innocence in order to trick you. We'll proceed mainly under these two trains of thoughts today. However, just to share a few other theories to consider when people report encountering a child's apparition, we could simply be dealing with residual, non-intelligent energy. We've talked about residual before. Not a big deal, just a holographic movie. We could also be dealing with living children rather than deceased via things like time slips, ripples in space-time, and timelines converging for just a split second. Or we could even be seeing the visual manifestation of a child in our timeline who is simply astrally projecting. So, there are other options. But, like I said, we'll focus on the two main theories today. Let's take a quick look at a historical trajectory surrounding ghost children that I believe has had the greatest effect on how we view them today. For a very long time in humanity's early history, the concept of ghostly children was intertwined and neck with the concept of ghostly adults. There was nothing especially unique or heartbreaking about the way these spirits of deceased children were portrayed. They were depicted within the broader context of spirits and souls within the culture's afterlife beliefs. So, as we've touched on before, from early Egyptian to ancient Greek and early Roman paranormal beliefs, it was key to treat the dead with utmost respect and to see to proper burial, no matter the age. Because, no matter the age, if you did not, you had an angry spirit on your hands who could come back as a not-so-nice entity until things were made right. So, yes, this idea included children. In medieval Christianity, religious beliefs, building on and in reaction to the earlier sway of paganism and early Greek-inspired beliefs, began to intermix, curate, and supersede earlier concepts about ghosts and the afterlife, and they introduce us to a concept called limbo. At this time, the idea would form that all good little girls and boys took the express elevator straight to heaven, so long as they were baptized. Limbo was a place for people too good for hell and too bad for heaven, and unbaptized babies and children. And you might recall from our history dive that when medieval Christianity was at its severest and most dogmatic, ghosts were demons, pure and simple, because God was the almightiest and most powerful, and if these visions of our deceased loved ones were somehow escaping the grasp of either heaven or hell, then that would mean people were somehow outsmarting God. And we couldn't have that. So, they had to be demons, trying to trick us. But because ghost stories and sightings persisted so prevalently, and because there was still some stealing to be done from the early pagans, Christians adopted purgatory from Plato and made it their own. And wouldn't you know it, it was God's will for certain souls to be there. Ghosts were those souls residing in limbo or purgatory, children or otherwise. And it fell on us, in the world of the living, to pray enough to get them to heaven. It was a confusing time, you guys. We see a common theme in Slavic folklore, the concept of the unbaptized child lingering in ghost form and creating all kinds of discomfort for the living. The Dracovic from South Slavic mythology are the souls of these children. Dracovic translates to the screamer, and could appear in a few ways, including as a child who would appear to passers-by and beg them to baptize it. They could be seen at nighttime, especially during the 12 days of Christmas. There's a little extra guilt for you. Scandinavian folklore as well believed children could become ghosts. These were the spirits of kids who were not buried properly and restlessly roamed the earth, seeking justice, burial, or baptism. They could get quite nasty if they were not helped. These were called the Mylingar. Mylings had a reputation for being some of the nastiest types of ghosts in Scandinavian folklore and comes from the practice of infanticide of unwanted children. Children born out of wedlock or born into families unable to care for them might be abandoned in secret, left out in the woods or other remote locations where they were sure to meet their end. The folklore says Mylings could be heard singing or wailing in the night, revealing the crime that had been done to them. These ghosts would chase lone people wandering at night and jump on their backs. They were then to be carried to a graveyard to be put to rest in hallowed ground. But Mylings grew heavier the closer the person got to the graveyard. So heavy, in fact, someone might begin to sink into the ground as they are trudging along, trying to right this wrong. The weight of guilt. Someone might not make it in time, and then the Myling would kill them in a rage, and then move on to try their luck with another person. The Myling haunted either the place they were left to die, or they found their way back to their mother's or father's house, whoever had taken them to die, and haunt that instead. The Myling were so scary and so vengeful because, due to their murder being carried out usually so quickly following their birth, through the Christian lens, these children were automatically denied baptism and proper burial, and thus they could not rest peacefully. The Mylingar is pretty dark stuff. So, in this early chapter of society's labeling and conceptualizing of the ghostly child, we can see, as dark as it is, it starts at a place of equality in death with their adult counterparts. Then we start to see some separation of the ghost child from the rest of the pack, and with the aid of Christian beliefs, the possibility that the ghost child is particularly vulnerable to a restless afterlife due to the failures of the living. A failure that can lead to a young ghost who is not just unrested, but vengeful and malicious. We start to see an interesting shift and further separation after the medieval period, heading into the Romantic, Victorian, and Spiritualism eras. Here, we grow familiar with the beautiful tragedy of ghostly children and ghost stories. Something romanticized and melancholic. The ghostly child becomes a symbol of love lost too soon, of innocence and purity shrouded in the macabre and mysterious. This period was a boom for literature and publishing. More folks were gaining the ability to read than ever before, particularly in the middle class. And with the Victorians' focus and fascination on death, the afterlife, romantic notions of the past, fear of instability the future might bring, the ghost story itself was always going to be a pastime staple of the times. But add the alarmingly high rates of child mortality at the time, and you've got an excellent opportunity to unite innocence lost with comfort and hope that maybe it's not quite as lost as originally thought. And this hope was not just captured in the published ghost story, but in ghost photography, art, plays. This hope was also captured in what would be a considerably macabre activity by today's standards, but in post-mortem photography, where the corpse of a deceased child would be posed or situated on a bed or table as if they were asleep, dressed in nice clothing or white christening gowns. It was a way to record their passing, but also a way to remember them, forever capturing their child when they were perfection and pure, the perceived innocence of childhood captured permanently in the snap of a photo. The cult of the child revealed itself especially in this era. More emphasis was placed on the importance of children, propping them up above all others. They were precious. They were angelic. The ghost child became archetypal. These ideas melded fluidly with the Victorians' growing interest in spiritualism and anxieties about death, so the idea of a child's spirit carrying on after life, in spirit, in ghost, was ideal, and even further cemented as fact via communications established by mediums during seances at the time. And it's clear this ideal has carried over to the modern day to some extent, especially in the more spiritualist and metaphysical circles. And you can be damned certain the idea that children ghosts may be demonic, a remnant of our more archaic Christian ideas, have also carried over into the modern day. And voila! I present to you our two main tropes behind the ghostly child today. But which one is right? Is there actually anything to either theory? Do children become ghosts? Or is something malevolent wearing a child's face, manipulating humanity's greatest emotional vulnerability in order to trick and harm us? Western society is not unique in their dual-sided views on who ghost children might be. In Japanese folklore, one benevolent yokai is a protective child spirit called a Zashiki Warashi. They are house spirits who appear to be around 5 or 6 years old with blushing red faces. Signs that a household may have a Zashiki Warashi include finding a trail of children's footprints. I cannot say that I would be thrilled to see that myself. Hearing noises of children's games like tops spinning and hearing children's laughter. Also creepy, but that is okay. The Zashiki Warashi are known for their love of mischief and pranks. However, it is thought they are lucky to have in your home, and you want to do what you can to keep them there and happy, as they can bring you and your family prosperity and wealth. This has led to customs like putting food out for them and attracting them to begin with by laying coins in the foundations of new homes that are being built. If someone has a Zashiki Warashi and chooses to drive the spirit out, it's agreed the family will fall into ruin or ill health. These spirits are thought to befriend any living children in the home and can keep the childless and the elderly company. Just friendly, mischievous, but friendly little ghost kids. There are a couple of behavior traits we see with the Zashiki Warashi that are fairly common in our ghost lore here in the West, too. The lucky or helpful trait. There is a well-known urban legend about a set of railroad tracks that intersect with a road in San Antonio. The story goes, once upon a time, a school bus full of children stalled while trying to cross the tracks, and they were hit by a train, killing everyone on the bus. It is said if you put your car in neutral while over the tracks, the ghosts of the children from that incident will push your car, apparently up an incline, to safety. Some folks have thrown baby powder on their trunk and claimed to see small handprints after their car had been pushed. The original story and this whole phenomenon is also said to have been debunked a couple of times, debunkers pointing out that that incline is actually an optical illusion and it slopes downward, and also saying the original story, it never happened. So, the legend may not be true, but it's a good example that highlights our thoughts regarding child ghosts as benevolent and bringers of help and aid. The mischievous trait, now that is a big one, and it makes sense, right? We're talking about little kids. Hundreds of reports from folks in locations purportedly haunted by young'uns report hearing things like children laughing, crying, playing, and running up and down hallways in the middle of the night. This is said to be something that is often reported on the 4th floor of the Stanley Hotel in Estes, Colorado. For anyone not familiar, this hotel was the inspiration for the Overlook Hotel in Stephen King's book and film, The Shining. While it was not the location for filming, the Stanley is said to be quite haunted by but not limited to a bunch of kids who like to wake visitors up in the wee hours of the morning by running amok. And apparently, at times, jumping on people's beds. Mischievous little heifers. Many reports include their resident child ghost taking and hiding things that are not theirs. It seems like, at least the stories that I have read, many times these spectral children can be reasoned with into returning said items, so it's not being done out of malice. Mischief, but not malice. Another trait has more so to do with the haunted rather than the haunter. Folks can take a liking to or come to love their ghost child. In the example of the Zashiki Warashi, those elderly and infertile couples who enjoy the company of the ghost child come to treat them as if they were their own. In contemporary Thailand, the practice of propitiation or adoption of spirit children has experienced a surge in popularity. And in the Thai context, we do see an extension of that cult of the child mentality that we saw with the Victorians, but with an interesting addition to it. The relationship between the ghost child and their parental guardian has grown a bit more complex in recent history compared to how it looked when it was first recorded in the 17th century. Kumintong were traditionally just a material thing, an amulet or figurine magically endowed with the spirit of a child. In the modern day, the term kumintong encompasses both that original idea of an object that houses a child's spirit as well as the idea of the child's spirit itself. In some Thai populations, there is a heavy focus on the power of the child, but especially so of the child following their death, who is thought to suddenly be endowed with supernatural powers. Once the child's spirit is adopted, this gives a special access to their living guardian to this power. Because of this extra level to the relationship, these ghost children act as a two-pronged resource. They provide companionship, affection, and love, of course, but they can also provide for material needs. In a paper written about this that I am linking in the sources, they state these spirits provide labor to the household via protection of the home from burglars and aiding in the general pursuit of household prosperity. So, kind of similar in a way to the Zashiki Warashi, who bring luck and prosperity to their family. This relationship is seen as mutually beneficial in that the child has a family and a place to call home. This arrangement is voluntary for the child and takes place while they are awaiting rebirth anyway, so in providing their supernatural powers for the benefit of their living caretakers, they are kind of racking up karmic points until they incarnate again. And this arrangement can be canceled at any time by either party. Kind of fascinating, right? Now, I found their ideas around the object or amulet that houses the spirit that they then adopt especially fascinating. It occurred to me that we do something similar in the Western world. Dolls haunted by the spirits of children for sale on eBay? In need of a good home? Anyone? Bueller? Yeah, so if you have ever considered adopting a ghost child, you can quite easily. Let's shift gears and take a look at the darker side. A similar but more nefarious concept to the Kumintong of Thailand is the Indian Hindu concept of the Kachakalwa.
Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You look great. What have you been doing?
I found Zelthy. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe the same active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s for 80 to 90% less without insurance. All of mine shipped right to your door.
Get started with Zelthy today for just $39. Call pound 250 and say keyword CARE. That's CARE to pound 250.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Because the only resources I could find about this subject were YouTube videos that had to be translated from Hindi, I believe. Thank goodness for YouTube translation. But even so, there was a bit of piecing together of information. From what I understand, on one hand, the Cachicolwa is spoken about as an urban legend only. It's a story told to children kind of in the same way La Llorona is told to Hispanic youth as a scary or cautionary tale. But on the other hand, it's spoken about in hushed tones, as if it's something that is very real and is taking place in the back rooms and darkest corners of society, and there may be a real threat and harm that can come of it. People who have spoken about it as a reality have hinted that members of their family who are sorcerers have either successfully created a Cachicolwa or know someone who has. And this is how. When a very young child dies in India, they are buried, not cremated. A magic practitioner with malevolent intent unburies the child, takes them home, washes, and perfumes them. Then they perform specific mantras over the body for 3 to 4 days straight without a break. Here's where the concept splits into two tributaries. The Cachicolwa can be both the reanimated corpse of the child if the ritual is performed correctly. The Cachicolwa also refers to the ghost of the child. Either way, the Cachicolwa is summoned in order to do the bidding of the practitioner. It becomes their familiar. The practitioner can then send them to haunt and disrupt the lives of anyone they see fit. This ghost child may also have the ability to possess or oppress, which are both very demonic traits. I only found one example of this, but still wanted to share. A first-hand account was submitted to a program called Real Horror Experience, hosted by Vikal Kashyap, from a man named Sagar, who says he had a playmate when he was a child who was a Cachicolwa. He didn't know this at first. He met his friend randomly in his room one day, thinking it was just a neighbor kid who popped in that he'd never seen before. He thought nothing of it, and he and his friend set about playing together every day for an extended period of time. Both of his parents worked a lot, and neither ever saw this friend, who would always go home shortly before Sagar's parents would walk through the door. Time passes, and Sagar was accepted to a prestigious school program out of town. He starts going to the school, but immediately gets very, very sick. So sick, his parents bring him home, and he becomes well. Goes back to school, falls very ill, comes back home, gets totally better. They did this over and over again, not understanding what was happening. It was during one of Sagar's trips away from home that his mother began to experience some pretty creepy stuff in their home involving a small child-sized entity. There's a lot more to this story, but ultimately it winds up that activity got to be so much, they ended up calling in someone to basically do an exorcism or banishment of this Cachicolwa. Was this a child's ghost who was sent by black magic to wreak havoc on this family and their son per the Cachicolwa lore? Was it a child's ghost who just grew too attached to its only friend? Was it something pretending to be a child in order to possess this kid or attach itself to the home? We can't know that, but we can compare it to stories more familiar to us that do support the theory that kids go straight to heaven, therefore apparitions of children encountered are actually always something malicious in disguise. Indonesian and Malay folklore have their own version of the Kacakalwa, wherein it is invoked by a black magic practitioner and used for nefarious bidding. The toil, while it is used to bring luck and riches to its host, is feared by anyone who encounters one, as this would be indicative of the host having sicked it upon them to rob them of their riches. The toil is traditionally described looking like a near-naked toddler, at times with the exception of sharp teeth and red eyes. Modern depictions have it appearing more goblin-like with green skin, pointy ears, and has the ability to climb walls and get on top of people's homes. Make no mistake about it, though. The toil, it is the end result of a baby's soul after a shaman has laid his claim to it. A different twist on this folklore can be found in the Philippines. The tiyanak is a vampiric monster that only takes the form of an infant in order to lure people in. It's thought to set its trap by changing form into a baby and crying from the jungle. When the victim comes to its rescue, the tiyanak reverts back to true form and attacks them. And that's part of the darker theory, right? It's a fear of those who believe all child ghosts are actually demons in disguise, that they will use our willingness to help the weak, our empathy for innocence and purity, in order to trick us. And we're told this is the case so many times over and over again with urban legends, pop culture, and even reports from real-life investigations that it becomes hard not to buy into it, or at least second-guess our own experiences should we encounter not just a ghost, but a young one. We can look to contemporary cases like Annabelle, the haunted doll, and see this very fear played out. A medium told Annabelle's original owner that the doll was haunted by the spirit of a little girl who just wanted to be loved. They felt bad and invited her to stay, only later realizing, ruh-roh, that's no little girl, that is something else. They were lured in under false pretenses and suffered the consequences for it. Psychological trauma, physical attacks. It's a terrifying story. We become familiar with it, hear about all of the chaos that ensued, stories about people who died once the doll was in the Warrens' possession because they were disrespectful, and we have to wonder at that point, gosh, that happened to them, therefore it's a real possibility, therefore it can also happen to me, and now I must be on guard and always wonder if I'm chit-chatting with a demon playing make-believe. It adds an extra hard layer to an already difficult activity like responsibly, paranormally investigating a location. But I want to offer you some perspective here at the end. While it would probably make this episode so much more exciting to end on the assume every child ghost is a demon first and then move on from their standpoint, I can't do that. I don't want to do it, but I can't. My red flags go up with this theory to begin with. I still stand by my conclusion about the demonic during Season 3. And that being the case, here are a few thoughts that I'll leave you with today. First off, the demonic under any context is solely a religious concept. As a non-religious person, I'm working from a different framework already, but I feel I did do my due diligence investigating that topic. I'm more than open to considering phenomena I don't understand or don't currently believe in order to give it a fair shake, and I have been persuaded and made a believer of numerous things by doing this. The demonic was not one of them. By the end of my dive into the demonic, while there was certainly an argument to be made for dark and negative energies, trickster entities, true evil within man, I just wasn't convinced by the story of hell or a dark lord ruling over it and his army of demons. There were too many holes and a lot to be learned when considering the history and evolution of these Christian terms and names and ideas. And if you are still listening at this point, if I haven't turned you off, and you are ever up to the task of either deconstructing what you think you already believe or just having a fascinating look at the history of the satanic, I highly recommend the book The Origin of Satan by Elaine Pagels. Very well researched and incredibly eye-opening. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we can also see how the demonic was used and swapped around in order for the medieval church to get a handle on their ghost problem. All ghosts were obviously demons. But then that became, maybe some are demons. But no, actually, ghosts are just people, including unbaptized children, who are hanging out in purgatory, and they need our prayers to get them out and up to heaven, thus laying a foundational stone in an inherent belief most of us in the paranormal field sort of naturally accept as fact today. Not many question it. It's the belief that the ghostly state is not a good state to be in and needs to be rectified somehow. Stick a pin in that for just a sec. We're going to circle back as to how it pertains to children. Longtime investigator and well-versed researcher on all things spooky and mysterious, Alex Matsuo, wrote a fantastic entry on her blog, The Spooky Stuff, about how to speak with the ghosts of children. I've got it linked below. She says, in her 20 years of investigating and numerous encounters with the young and the ghostly, only twice has she encountered a spirit presenting itself to be a child when it probably wasn't. She writes, 99% of the time, the ghosts of children are not demons, and notes that this is a very Christian-centric, heaven and hell-based idea. And then goes on to teach you how to appropriately speak to ghost children, coming from someone with a very long history working with children in the educational field. Good stuff. Really good stuff. It was great. And Alex is not the only one championing the belief that is emerging more and more across the paranormal field that not everything is a demon. This is supported by a poll I recently posted on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for those who took it. I was excited by the results because it showed me in real time that more and more folks, at least ones who follow this program, are in agreement that not everything is a demon, that ghost children likely are what they appear to be, the spirits of kids. All right, let's focus it back in on children and the ghostly state. Researching ghost children caused something quite unexpected to occur on my end. It has caused me to question the ghostly condition and how traditionally in this field, when we think ghost, we think earthbound. We equate earthbound with stuck, and we conclude stuck is bad. So, to be a ghost is a bad thing. But if I've been able to poke holes in the child ghosts or demons theory, then that leaves me with some stomach-sinking possibilities that kiddos pass away and become earthbound ghosts. And that is so sad. Where is the cosmic fairness in that? But what if our initial equation is incorrect? What if we have completely misunderstood the condition of earthbound? In many cultures, they have a belief that certain spirits return regularly from the spirit realm to the realm of the living to visit family or for celebrations. The Oban is an annual Japanese event where it is believed spirits of people's loved ones temporarily return to this world to visit their relatives. These spirits come by choice, out of love. They aren't trapped in any capacity. Similarly, in Chinese culture, during the Ghost Festival, the deceased are believed to visit the living, and their ghosts are permitted to receive food and drink with their loved ones. Dia de los Angelitos is actually the lesser-known first day of Mexico's Day of the Dead celebrations, Day of the Little Angels. Why is it the first day? It is believed the children are so eager to return to see family and to celebrate, to eat the candy and play with the toys left for them as offerings, that their ghosts arrive a whole day ahead of everyone else. These ghosts all return by choice. In some indigenous cultures, the dead don't go anywhere, but continue to exist in a layered reality right alongside the land of the living. Cherokee cosmology didn't separate the spiritual from the physical. It was comprised of 3 distinct layers: the upper and underworld, both spiritual, and this world, where we live. But all were intertwined. These ghosts weren't stuck. They simply continued on in the same sphere, their presence ongoing, like flipping a switch off in a room. You're still standing in the same room, even though the lights are different now. And in speaking with paranormal investigators on this show, I have listened to personal accounts of interactions with ghosts who were just hanging out, seemingly because they just wanted to. They weren't stuck. It wasn't about unfinished business. They weren't frightened. They were just so unbothered and kind of content in their chosen afterlife. Some people can, but just don't want to go yet, I imagine. Some may like it here. Going into the light may mean rest, but maybe presence means purpose. There are so many possible reasons behind why a ghost might come back or remain, but no matter the reason, I'm seeing some wiggle room in this earthbound, stuck concept. And we might think, oh, okay, well, that may be true for adults who have the logic and reasoning power, but that can't be the case for children who didn't have the chance to develop those abilities before they passed. They're helpless now, frightened, fragile, vulnerable. To base what a ghost can and cannot do because of their age is also an extremely Christian-centric idea. And I will explain what I'm talking about. This idea hinges around the belief that you only get one life, and then it's eternity for you. I don't believe that to be true. I happen to believe in a form of reincarnation, the basic idea of it, anyway. I've always been drawn to it and have run into a lot of evidence that points to it as likely. Children with past life memories that can be verified, documented regression hypnosis with people like Dr. Michael Newton and Brian Weiss, whose patients recall past lives, and, interestingly, seem to also describe this existence between lives that is very similar to the way others describe it. I had never considered the concept of a life between lives before reading Newton's Journey of Souls. What a fascinating concept. But it totally makes sense, though. If we reincarnate over and over again, there's got to be an existence between our last death and our upcoming incarnation. And that these patients who didn't know each other described it so similarly. So strange. If reincarnation is what happens, and we have an open-ended number of lifetimes because we have an unlimited amount of time, then it's about the soul itself, its evolution, its learning, its growth. And if it's about the soul itself and not the body, if spirit persists, is it really bound by the restrictions of a temporary age? Do you really believe that? Or does our soul's knowledge perhaps come back to us at death, just as it disappeared when we forgot it at birth? I've not gone off the deep end, guys. I promise you. All of this is just to allow us to consider that perhaps being in the ghostly condition comes down to choice more than we think. Perhaps we living project traits and attributes unnecessarily upon them because we can't clearly see or understand their existence, and that makes us afraid. And then we continue to build on and pass along these old beliefs that were created from our ignorance and religion's lasting effects, never stopping to consider that a child might be in ghostly form because that soul is choosing to linger. They like exploring the world in a way they couldn't in their most recent incarnation. They want to play and be mischievous, hiding your keys and playing with your cat. You know? Maybe they just vibing, man. So to conclude this one, personally, I'm gonna fall into the ghost kids are just kids camp, with maybe an exception here or there for the trickster entity or asshole ghost just looking to stir up trouble. I would say I don't think there's as much to fear as the urban legends and beliefs we share across cultures leads us to think there is. That said, if you are an investigator and you find yourself in an opportunity to make contact with a child ghost, approach it as cautiously or openly as you need to feel safe. Personally, though, I'm going to take Miss Matsuo's advice from her blog, should I find myself in front of a young one. I'm going to get down on their level, say hi, and treat them just like I would any other child. Men who fear demons see demons everywhere. I guess I just don't. Thank you for joining me today. I understand not everyone is going to agree with my diagnosis on this one. That is all right. I will say, based on today's content, dudes, I think it's high time for a new paranormal framework. One that involves a lot less fear and a lot more curiosity. Please. We're going to learn far more with curiosity, folks. You know what? I've just finished listening to the audiobook of A People's History of America. It's a great one. It's great. It's going to make you mad. Page 1, you'll be mad. So I guess I've just got some of the themes on my mind. I've seen what fear of something unknown, of someone other, can do to a people. I mean, greed, too, to the highest degree. But definitely fear. And look, as far as ghost kids are concerned, 2 things can be true. All of the reasons a ghost exists here on Earth, child or no, that we're all already familiar with, can certainly play a part in their being here. My argument is not to say every single one is here by choice and therefore earthbound and stuck do not exist. That may still hold true in some cases, and they may still need our help. I assume it's very much a case-by-case basis. But maybe our preconceived notions of the ghostly are getting in the way of truly understanding it and seeing that sometimes we don't always need to be rushing in there to send them into the light. Again, I think some just vibing, including kids. If you enjoyed this one and the show in general, please give it a 5-star or equivalent of 5-star review on whichever platform you're catching it. Really appreciate it. If you have thoughts you would like to share in response to today's show, maybe you vehemently disagree with me, I welcome your input. Message me at paranormalgirlpod@gmail.com. My only ask is that you also include why you hold the belief you do. What convinced you beyond a shadow of a doubt? that's going to wrap us today. I'll see you guys back here in 2 weeks for an all-new one. In the meantime, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.
Lowe's knows how to set off your July 4th with savings. Right now, buy one, get one free on select one-coat coverage interior paint via Visa gift card rebate. Plus, get 2 select 2 or 2.5 quart red, white, and blue annuals for just $10. Hurry, these July 4th deals won't last long. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 7/9. Selection varies by location. While supplies last, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. More terms and restrictions apply. See Lowe's.com/rebates for more details.